Hello, my name is Cheryl and I'm here to talk you through Unit 1 materials in this MOOC on sustainable business practice. And you may already have seen me go through the introduction to Unit 1 as well as the overview of the MOOC. And I'm really looking forward now to taking a step into the content of what the Sustainable Development Goals actually mean for sustainable business practice. So we're going to start with Part A, talking about the interrelationships, and then in Part B, we'll have a look at the challenges and the opportunities for implementing the SDGs. You may want to have a look at the materials as we go along, or you can just listen to me. In the other units that you experience in this MOOC, you'll be working through the resources yourself. So strap yourself in for a guided conversation through Unit 1. Now, I am sure that you have seen this image before relating to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal. Perhaps you've just looked at it and thought about the colourful nature of the 17 goals. Perhaps you've had a look at some of the images that they've used to represent the various goals, and maybe you've even gone and had a look inside what it means to be achieving any of those particular goals. What we're going to do now is have a look at how they are themed and opportunities that lie in understanding their relationship to each other. A little bit of background first that you should know as part of this MOOC. So the UN SDGs are actually part of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which was adopted unanimously by the 193 heads of state and other leaders back in 2015 in New York. And it set the 17 what they call universal goals that aim to protect the longevity of the earth, its resources, and its people. And within that, there are 169 targets spread across the 17 goals to be addressed and hopefully achieved within the next 15 years. So that means from 2016 to 2030. The goals themselves span social, environmental, and economic challenges, and they actually build on a previous set of goals developed by the United Nations called the Millennium Development Goals, which were in place from 2005 through 2015. And this is not a journey by itself. It has actually built on from several other really key journeys in developing global agreements on action. One that you might want to recall from this introductory MOOC is the Kyoto Protocol back in 1997 that was attempting to find common agreement on how to move forward with greenhouse gas emissions. The UN SDGs are universal, having the agreement that I just spoke of, but they are not legally binding in themselves unless a country decides to take on the various goals and targets within their legislation. So understanding that context then is important when we think about how the UN SDGs can be grouped and understood to move forward in building them into our business practices. So there's no right or wrong, but we have thought about being able to group them into 4 categories or themes, and those are well-being, infrastructure, the natural environment, and partnership. You can learn more about the SDGs by following the hyperlink in your materials on this slide. So now we will have a look at a visual representation of the clustering of the UN SDGs, which will help us to see these categories or themes. And I'm going to take you on a little journey around the diagram, so we'll zoom in and out and I'll show you some features. So you can see on the sides of the diagram here that we've reminded you of the UN SDGs and their various images that are associated with the number. Inside the diagram, if we zoom into the innermost part, we have the category of well-being, and it sits at the centre of considerations for what aspirations we have for our planet. So UN SDG 1 is around ending poverty in all forms. The third one is around ensuring healthy lives and promoting well-being. Number 4 is around ensuring inclusive and quality education. Number 5 relates to gender equality and empowering girls and women. 10 is about inequality, and 11 is about promoting peaceful and inclusive societies. We then have a look at infrastructure, which is the next ring around well-being. So you could imagine that infrastructure is actually important to have aspirations for, to ensure that we also address our well-being goals. So in the infrastructure ring around the diagram, we can see this relates to goal 7, around ensuring access to affordable, reliable, sustainable modern energy for everyone, while goal 8 is around promoting sustained and inclusive economic growth. Actually, if we come back to goal 2, which sequentially is straight after the poverty goal, around ending hunger to achieve food security, you can see that that actually relates to infrastructure as well as well-being. So you can see the relationship there. Goal 11, making cities and human settlements safe, is obviously around infrastructure, as well as goal 9, which is around building resilient infrastructure and promoting inclusive, sustainable infrastructure. Goals 6 and 12 relate to ensuring the availability of water sanitation and also considering sustainable production and consumption patterns. So you can see that the infrastructure goals very well support the well-being goals in this context. Surrounding the infrastructure goals then are the natural environment goals, and these are quite specific around climate change, which is goal 13, in taking urgent action to combat climate change and its impact. And then 14, relating to sustainable use of oceans, sea and marine resources. So this is life below water. And goal number 15, around protecting, restoring and promoting sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems or life on land. It is obvious then that the natural environment ring needs to be surrounding the infrastructure and well-being rings, because it is within the natural environment that we have our infrastructure and well-being considerations. It's also obvious, planet Earth is round and our natural environment is the context for our built environment and our human habitation. So that makes sense. Surrounding everything then, we can see this partnerships goal, which is goal number 17, around strengthening the means of implementation and revitalising the global partnership goals. Now, this one is critical to be surrounding all of the others, because the partnerships for sustainable prosperity, as you can see down here, partnerships for the goals, is absolutely critical for making everything work. So we will now have a look at those clusters alongside each other and see how they relate inside the rings. The well-being goals are listed here, a little bit more easy to see, address poverty, healthy lives and well-being, inclusive and equitable quality education, gender equity, inequality, and peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development. And you can see that across those well-being goals, having quality education, for example, is very much related to gender equality, and also very much related to having peace, justice, and strong institutions. However, we need to create separate goals so that we can have targets to aspire to, and this is why they have been separated out into these thematic areas. The infrastructure goals in that next ring out, so you can see in the top corner here, it's this next level, are also associated with each other. So the zero hunger goal actually relates to the economic growth goal very closely, and the industry, innovation and infrastructure goal is very much associated with sustainable cities and communities. But inside each of these goals, the targets are quite specific, and that is why we have 169 targets inside the 17. If we move to the next layer, which is this outer one here that you can see in the corner, We have climate action, life below water and life on land. And their interconnectivity is obvious because climate action must be interconnected with the story of our oceans as well as the story of our atmosphere. But the targets inside them, you'll see when you have a look, are actually quite specific to either climate or marine or terrestrial components. And this final area, the blue on the edge of the diagram, is around the partnerships for the goals in revitalising what is there and fostering new partnerships. And actually, the main aim is to ensure that countries cooperate and develop a multi-stakeholder partnerships so that they can share their knowledge, expertise, technology, and financial support. This is the goal that we end up finding ourselves talking about in relation to any of the other 16 goals. We usually find that goal 17 comes into play. And at the level of the business, you might think partnerships for the goals is about cooperation, and a word that we also use called coopetition, where we use our business allies and our business relationships to create communities of practice, to create supply chains, to create economic markets for us to do well by doing good. So this is a very important goal inside the UN SDGs. I just want to have a short look at one of the other interrelationships between the goals. And I've used, with my colleague who wrote these slides, we've used slightly different images here just to make it easier to see. But I wonder if you can tell what we're referring to in this diagram. We have SDG 17, which is the handshake, so obviously that's the partnership. But immediately around 17 are those three natural environment goals I was referring to before. 13, 14 and 15, so climate change, life underwater and life on land. Those three are nested within the next layer, which is the infrastructure goals I was referring to before. And our key point here is that within a business environment, having that level of cooperation, coopetition, and camaraderie amongst communities of practice is absolutely essential to ensure that those three inner goals are met while we undertake our businesses in the infrastructure that we use every day and the built environments that we work and live in. So that concludes our walk through part A of our first unit in considering the interrelationships between the Sustainable Development Goals. I look forward to seeing you as we look at part B around the challenges and opportunities.